Thank you, everybody, for coming. We have some really fun guests today. This is our third Instagram Live with talking about mascots in Utah. The first week we had community members who had been Bountiful High School alumni or Bountiful City citizens talk about what the mascot meant to them and why they wanted to change it. The second week was we had Bountiful High School students who wanted to talk about what they learned about mascots and what they've been learning about racism and their perspective on these things. And so now we're on the third week. Yay! And it's the last week of July. So happy August tomorrow. This week I thought it would be really great to kind of just have some Native voices in Utah share some thoughts. So we're going to have a few people on today. And our first guest is Michelle Brown. And we're just going to call her up and see if we can have a moment. Hi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm outside, so if there's any background noise, don't worry.
Gotcha.
Outside.
Well, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm really grateful. We have not met yet, but I found was introduced to you and your work because you had written a letter in support of changing mascots in Utah. So would you mind, Michelle, giving us an introduction to who you are, and especially about the work that you do, which I think people just need to know what you do, because it's pretty dang cool.
Thank you. Absolutely. So my name is Michelle Brown. I'm originally from Anchorage, Alaska, and I'm an enrolled member of the Navajo tribe. And I moved to New York maybe, 10 years ago, and I had lived there for 7 years, and then I moved to Utah 3 years ago. So I still consider myself still figuring out Utah a little bit. There's so much of it to find out and learn new things about. I've lived here before as a youth, and I've been to New Mexico plenty of times because that's where my father is from. He's from originally the Two Great Hills Navajo Reservation. And so I'm familiar with the area. So I became involved last year, May of last year, in MMIW Utah. I started joining the rallies. And for those of you who don't know what MMIW Utah is, it's an organization. It's a grassroots organization of volunteers on behalf of murdered and missing Indigenous women and Two-Spirit. And so that's a little bit of background. That organization helps with, advocating for, of course, murdered and missing Indigenous women, children, and Two-Spirit individuals. We do a lot of planning meetings. We actually hold a planning meeting every Sunday, first of the month. And so I got more involved last year. It all kind of came to head for me when actually my sister-in-law, my nephew's mother, in November of 2018 was found murdered in Arizona. And so that was a big turning point for me that turned me from just a normal everyday person to someone who became more involved in activism. And I look at my former self, and I really didn't speak up. I was very quiet. I kept my opinion to myself. And this was kind of a moment in my life where things came to a head, and it put things into perspective for me. And it really made me want to reach out and educate myself further about the issues surrounding murdered and missing Indigenous women. So that being said, I have a friend who is from Bountiful who I met in New York City. And she had been sharing with me many things about her neighborhood in Bountiful, and actually about the mascot way before it went to the news, after the story broke about the Bountiful mayor and his response. So she had been sharing with me like personal photos and quotes from the yearbook in Bountiful, and I was just kind of wowed that this was happening, especially in 2020. And so, of course, my interest was completely piqued when I saw the story breaking about the Bountiful mayor's response to a letter that was sent from a concerned community member. And so that's how I became aware. And of course, I penned that letter for MMIW in support of changing the mascot.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Such tragedy and violence that had propelled you into kind of speaking out more. So, speaking out on mascot issues, why did you decide to write a letter to the city council or to the school board about changing the mascot?
I feel like, as an activist, and for someone who is activating against a cause of MMIW, I would say there is a direct correlation between Native Americans being depicted as mascots and dehumanization. And I think that there's a strong correlation, because once you are able to, as a non-Native, decide that that's how Natives are depicted, you are instantly taking control and power away from those voices and those people. And so that really is what compelled me. I think it's so important for people nowadays, especially, to realize where your place is, and if it's really your place to even be able to give a label of that type to a people. And I've actually had some people reach out to me through DMs who are in support of the Bountiful mascot. And, you know, some of them were just genuinely curious and wanted to learn more and came non-confrontational, but truly wanted to know my side of the story. And really what that side of the story is that I don't think, and I don't speak for all Natives, I'll put that out there, I don't. But my personal opinion is that, you know, it's not anyone's place except for Native people's place to depict themselves first off. And I think that this whole matter of the mascot is 100% not a matter of anyone's opinion, their opinion, my opinion. It's a matter of fact that research and studies show that Native mascots are psychologically harmful to Native peoples. This is not a matter to debate, period. This is research from multiple studies that have shown that this is harmful emotionally and psychologically to Native peoples, and I think it's unfair.
It is unfair. I think it is too. One of the things that, I mean, we hear a lot is, you know, this mascot was established before I was born, before you were born. The people then were trying to honor, to kind of like bridge the gap of, okay, you're like, this is 2020 now. That happened then, that's true. But it's 2020 now. So how, I mean, you kind of just answered it, but how do administration and how does city officials, how does that, what would you say to them if they were saying, you know, we're trying to honor you? What would you say if you were able to speak to them?
Wow, well, a lot, to be honest, but I feel like that sentiment is extremely naive and ignorant of a lot of factors. So to that, I would say, you know, it's not your place to be the person to educate on Native issues. That's a Native person's place or a Native organization's place to make that type of education. I'll say that I read a quote in the Salt Lake Tribune that kind of goes to that fact, and it was someone saying, And I quote, "The people who are advocating to cancel the Braves are also perhaps unintentionally advocating to cancel Native American culture at VHS," unquote. And so to me, reading that, I was like, really? I feel that quote is super naive. Native American culture will never be canceled so long as actual Native Americans are practicing their culture and educating others about their culture. And in terms of honor, I think that it's our place to be able to choose how we want to be honored. And if the community is saying that this is not the way we honor each other and our Native community, then I really think that anyone who is an ally really needs to take that seriously, that we're saying, no, this isn't the way, but maybe this is the way, and listen to your Native community.
Right. I mean, I feel like an issue is always just trying to be heard as Native people. I mean, talking with people in Bountiful, when we share like how long this fight has been going on to end mascots, Native mascots, it's mind blowing how long it's been happening, decades,
Right.
And you're right, naive is such a good word to just think that, just because this is a new conversation to you, that it's just as simple as, well, I don't think that it's bad, or I think it's honoring you.
And that's kind of my point, is that if you are not Native American or from that community, then it's really not up to you. And you have to learn that it's not your place. Like, it's not your place to choose that for Native Americans in general. And I say that very kindly, but also very sternly, that it is just not your place. Sorry.
Right. And the easiest way to kind of rectify that is to change it and to have it something different.
Correct.
That the community can say, all right, this is different, and we're going to go forward in a new path, and we're all going to be, happy about it.
Yes. I want to add a little bit more to that too, because I think not only is it that you figure at some point that people who are non-Native who are making these decisions, not only should they start to listen to the Native American community, but they should start to educate themselves truly about the first peoples of this land, who they say that they're honoring. And really, the true honor would be listening to them, learning from them, and recognizing that you should not be the person to determine how to depict them. And also that mascots in general, when it's towards any certain ethnicity, is promoting appropriation. And I think we need to talk about that a little bit more, because there's so many different Native American tribes in the United States, and this is a white ideal depiction of Native Americans, and it's incorrect. And so I think in an effort to not appropriate, even from that stance, like, it should really be listened to. And this is what Native people...
Ooh, going in and out. Hopefully.
Sorry, the connection might be a little bit bad.
Oh, yeah, it's the connection. We're gonna end there, Michelle, if you can hear us, just because the connection is bad. But we'll try to connect back with you so that you can finish what you were saying. When that happens, I just hate that. Yeah, I mean, what she was saying was so awesome. That's exactly kind of like what we've been talking about. Is who the decision makers are not Native, so you need to listen to us. I'm going to have Carl Moore come on. He was there at the school board meeting. And thank you, Michelle, so much for those beautiful words and for the work that you're doing. Hi, Carl. How's it going?
Hey, it's good. So I'm outside also. Michelle's beautiful. Did an awesome job. Yeah, it's really good. I just got done with a Say Our Name rally.
Awesome.
So
always working.
well, that's the thing is there's always things to be done, you know, and you let the people who are marginalized lead that effort. That's the same thing with this is, you know, like Michelle is saying, you know, the indigenous voice, the voice gets to say in what is honoring us and what's not honoring us.
Right.
Just like here, you know, with Black Lives Matter, you know, people of color, you know, women of color lead it, you know, and we just support.
Right.
And there's a lot of beautiful people supporting at Bountiful High School, like Mallory, Michaela, all those people doing an awesome job, and they understand what's going on and their role.
They are. Carl, give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself and the work that you do.
Myself. Oh,
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Well, I've always been a performer. I do dancing. Like hoop dance was always my jam since I was 10. So I've always been performing, trying to kind of dispel the negative stereotypes of Native Americans, you know, being this straight-faced, mean, angry, drunk, even Indian, so to speak. And so I've lived my life really trying to spread messages of love and unity, and that, because that's been my jam. And then when Standing Rock happened, I mean, you were part of the whole Standing Rock movement as well. I mean, Standing Rock happened, you know, that's when I really started getting into the indigenous sovereignty issue of it, you know, of the sovereignty, of the political sovereignty and the sacred sovereignty. And I think that this speaks to that, you know, this mascots, it's a violation of a sacred sovereignty. You know, it's like what we should be able to define what is sacred, and it should be valued, and it should be taken taken seriously as that. So, yeah, I have two organizations. So the first one is PANDOS, Peaceful Advocates for Native Dialogue and Organizing Support, and which has a beautiful board of people. And actually, the MMIW committee, MMIW plus Utah, is under. We're the umbrella for the MMIW for Michelle's organization. And so we're really happy that she's taken on that role. We've had a lot of awesome people that have led that. Again, it's an Indigenous woman issue, so we let Indigenous women take the lead on that. And fortunately for us, Michelle stepped up and she took that on, you know, or else it wouldn't exist. So that's what we do. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. There's like things going on all around me. And then I have another organization called SLC Air Protectors. And so we do a lot of work for the environment. And there's like a direct correlation between like the way that we treat Mother Earth and is the same way we treat people and women and girls. And it's like, it's all this colonial mindset of a hierarchy of people that have the ability to look at another group of people and dehumanize them. And so it justifies their actions against them, just like it justifies their actions against Mother Earth. So yeah, two organizations, look them up, be a part of it. Awesome people doing good things.
Awesome. Thank you. So, Carl, you went to Bountiful High School the other day.
Yeah.
And did a live Facebook Live event showing kind of what is their imagery. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was really blown away. I went there, and when I first got there, I saw the logo, which is a bee and the feathers, two feathers, kind of like the Utes, which is another issue. So nobody bring that up. Don't bring up the Utes, and don't bring up the Seminoles. That's a direct group of people that has negotiated with those colleges. So when it comes to something generic as Braves, Indians, whatever, Savage, whatever that is, that's a different story. So I went there and I drove around and I just saw that logo and I thought, okay, well, this isn't that bad. There still is problematic in the sense that what it does for the people who go there, the people who go to the games, what they do, what they wear, what they, Anyway, so I got to the football field and I started going up that walkway and I was like blown away by what was there. And again, like Michelle's saying, this is 2020. This isn't stuff that is like they can't blame it on the past. It's happening right now. This is current. This is current thought. This is current thinking. And I want people to really think about this. This is a place of education. This is an establishment of education. This is where our kids go to hopefully be better people and good world citizens and just good people in general, right? And so when they are learning something, and when the faculty there allows for this type of racism to happen, which I understand that it's probably not outright racism. They don't know that it's racist. I granted. I mean, people are really sheltered in Bountiful, just like Utah County, where I grew up. I understand the environment of being sheltered and worldviews and things like that. So I get there, and the first thing that you see is established 1951. Okay, so my thing was, hey, 1951. Yeah, they thought a certain way, whatever. But you can't use that as something to say, hey, like, this is tradition. That tradition is so new, so recent. And that tradition doesn't justify racism. It doesn't justify the perpetuation of cultural genocide and cultural erasure, that's what they're doing is they're relegating us. They're keeping us They're keeping us in the past. All those images are from the past. And that's the only way that we're valid to most people when they see those things is if I don't look like that, if I don't wear a headdress like that, if my nose isn't shaped like that, then I'm not a real Native American. And that does psychological damage to those people and to us as Indigenous people. So even this, like I got hair on my face, like people are saying like, no, you don't look like a Native, right? Well, I am Native, okay? Just because I have hair on my face, just because you don't see these pictures of mascots with Natives with hair on their face. This is what I'm getting at. Is that becomes the archetype of what we look like. So some of the things I saw was Red Nation, very blatant, huge Red Nation, that's racist. Redskins, red man. I mean, we could talk a lot about that. We'll just stop there. Red Nation, okay. Right. And then it has something that I thought of when I got there was the correlation between toxic masculinity and this brave concept or this warrior concept. And how how we as a society, as a culture, as an American culture, how we glorify like violence or like aggression by men. Like men can be aggressive and violent and even savage, like which is like what that's the way that they're using it. So one of the things that was on there was also it was Fear the Dark. What was it? It's like I think it was like Fear the Dark or
like dark and red or something like that.
Yeah, it's like
equated the same thing.
Yeah, it's like be scared of us because we're evil, we're wicked, which is another local thing. If we're talking about a local,
very local
religious environment, dark and loathsome. I mean,
trying to explain what that is. It's a mind.
If you don't know, it's like built in. That's like a systematic, institutionalized racism. All right, so and then there was like something that said like fight, win with a tomahawk. I can't remember what it was, but again, it's just like warning. And when you start putting like mascots as a standard that goes before you in a battle, and that's what they're doing. I mean, that's what the games are. I mean, they're not battles, but they're competitions.
It's treated like it is. It's a fight to win. It's one, side. Yeah, it's totally a battle.
Yeah, and then I have a lot against like all that too, because like when you start like thinking that your school is the school, you start putting a moral value on it, and which is what they do. They put a moral value on it, and like the other school's like inherently like not good and evil. Right. Anyway, that's something else. So there's just so much. There's a depiction of the Native that I think was a nod to the end of the Trail Native, where you see that where the warrior's on the horse, in the sunset, and that is and that picture portrays the end of our existence as a people,
which is not real. We're still here.
Oh, we're still here. Yeah, with facial hair. We're still going. So anyway, yeah, and I mean, there's just so much of it, but the whole thing, I want to acknowledge that when the kids did that, because I'm sure there are kids that did that they didn't know what they were doing.
They didn't.
But this is the point where they can no longer say, I didn't know. They cannot use naivety as an excuse, because they should know. And it goes the same for all the superintendents, the principals, the teacher, all of this. They should know. So when they come out and they speak up and they say such things as, well, I have Native friends and they say this, or I have Black friends and they say this, or whatever, what they're doing is, it's a disservice to humanity. It's not just to us as Indigenous people. It's a disservice to them, because people should understand their arrogance, their innate arrogance and egocentrism and ethnocentrism, and we need to spell that across the board, right? Like, we gotta start understanding that we're all related as human beings. We're all related. Like this tree, I'm related to this tree. You're related to this tree. All of this, the whole environment, we're related, and we can't stop. We have to stop exploiting all of these things and exploiting Indigenous people, because that's what this is. It's the commercialization of Indigenous people. It's using us as a tool to sell something, not necessarily sell with money, but sell the idea, sell the school, sell the
pride.
The pride, exactly. It's exactly
the morality code that they have. So many times I've heard people say, "Well, I was a Braves and I did that and I'm not bad." And it's like, we're not talking about good or bad. We're talking about what needs to happen.
Yeah, that's the problem with privilege, with people with privilege, is they don't understand. That is like kind of the definition of privilege, is you don't understand. You don't know, you don't recognize it because you don't face it, you don't deal with it. It doesn't matter to you in the sense that it doesn't hurt your feelings, right? And so all of these people, the mayor needs to really understand what Michelle said, the psychology behind it. It does damage to us. And if we're going to move forward, which everyone should be thinking about moving forward, at some point we all need to recognize what is wrong with our thinking. Like I've done. I recognize, I grow, I have to reconcile my beliefs all the time, and I've gotten a lot of things wrong over my life.
Right.
But I am willing to admit that I'm wrong and move forward from that.
Yep. Awesome.
So that's what I'm asking of these people. It's just seriously take a listen. Step outside your bubble and look at it from our perspective, which, like Michelle said, is really the only perspective that really matters when it comes to mascots, because they are depictions of us.
Right.
And stereotypes don't help. Stereotypes never help. Whether they're a good stereotype or a bad stereotype, they never help.
Nope.
They're never good.
Good. Carl, thanks so much for chatting with me tonight, and thanks for taking time to speak about this. You've been with the Bountiful High School people and allies that have been fighting for many weeks now. And I'll give you a shout out a little bit later in this too about what you're planning next week.
Okay, yeah, do that. Okay. Be there. Because it's all about love. All about love and prayer. Okay, bye.
Awesome.
See ya.
Awesome. Awesome. So our next guest, and thank you again, Michelle. Thank you, Carl and Michaela and Mallory. You guys had a shout out too, so thank you so much for all of that. Our next guest is my friend Leah. Hello.
Hey, Megan.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Of course.
I'm just gonna have you share a little introduction of yourself. Please tell us about your education too, because what you do and the work that you do is really cool. So yeah, go ahead.
So my name is Leah Gishie. I recently got married. So a little bit about myself. I grew up on the Navajo reservation in Kaibito, Arizona. Since the economy on the res is not as robust as here, when my father passed away, we kind of migrated up here to Salt Lake with my family. That's where I went to school with you at Curtis High.
Did.
Yeah, and then I went to school for sorry, it's sorry, I don't know what. Okay, exercise, sports, science, and minor in nutrition. And I'm currently working at the University of Utah Hospital in the nutrition care department. I'm the supervisor there, and so my belief system is that through health and education, that we as people can become resilient. And I feel that deeply just because that's the way our ancestors had gone through all of the many tribulations that have been imposed upon us through the European colonization, the attempt to genocide against our people, and just through running and prayer. My Instagram name is Run in Beauty. It goes along with in our Navajo culture, it's called Hojon. And basically, it's having everything in balance with each other. So, and we do that in prayer and running mostly in the morning, just having a prayer in your heart and kind of giving your body up as a sacrifice and just running through and towards the sun. So that's kind of something that I've been working towards, education. And also I know Carl more as well. I participate in some of the activism that he does with Pandos, missing murdered Indigenous women, and the Salt Lake City Air Protectors. So I'm pretty involved with the community.
Yeah, you are, and that's why I was like, we need you. I can't believe I know you. So we went to high school together. We were maybe a handful of Native students that was in school, and never had to deal with a mascot in school.
Yeah.
So you, as a person looking back, and looking at education and how health plays a role in that, what do you think about this mascot issue?
As far as health goes, I feel that like the idea of a brave, being strong, I mean, that's not the only thing that is part of health. Physicality is not the entirety of wellness. I feel like spirituality, and those sorts of things, prayer, and intelligence. And I feel that the play of a brave mostly being physical, like I'm dominant, and like all of these different caricatures of Native American are of these strong buff guys, mostly portraying colonial masculinity. And I feel that what that does, just like Carl and Michelle had already said, it just reeks of colonial masculinity. And what that is just, it's toxic. It was never really what a leader is. Our leader is not Ani. It's more holistic, and it's just an erasure of our highly sophisticated Indigenous societies. And I feel that what they are portraying as a brave is not the whole truth about our Native men. And also, I think what happens is that when someone of a different culture sees a Native man on the road or like in the streets, everyday working day-to-day life, like what they have in their mind of a Native American man is that this masculine man who doesn't have any feelings, that doesn't have any kind of spirituality, that doesn't have any intellect of their own.
Yep.
And that gives them the permission to go and be violent with them, I feel like. And I know that there are starting to be more research on Native American Indian women who are going murdered and missing, but I feel like that's lacking with our Native American men.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that plays a big, huge role, especially at that age group where high school is where you're trying to figure out who you are, what your standards are, what are your values, and imagine yourself going to Bountiful High School as a Native American man and seeing that every day, and imagine if you are playing for that sport, you're more looked at as like, I don't know, like, you know, just like a piece of masculinity meat, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sell your, just like Carl said, sell your culture, the commercial of it. And I don't think that what the mayor said, like, people should be less easily offended. I feel like that's he's also playing a role in the erasure of our complex, sophisticated culture. And I just don't feel that he should, you know, he is advocating for racism and violence that way against his own students. If he does care about and he does want to honor our students, our Native American students, our people, then he should look into ways of becoming an ally. Like learn about the issues, learn about, like, if he knew that Utah was the 8th ranked state in Utah for the highest number of missing and murdered Indigenous women, like, what does this depiction of a brave do to our culture as a whole? And so, yeah, and Salt Lake City is also ranked the ninth highest city in the United States with the most murdered and missing Indigenous women. So, I mean, that's Indigenous women, but there's no numbers about murdered, missing Indigenous men.
Right.
I feel like if we were to look into those numbers, the numbers would be exponential. I feel way more than women. I think that's just the way our society looks at Native American men.
Gosh, wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. There are a lot of students at Bountiful High School and a lot of community members in Bountiful and, you know, Salt Lake, all the way down to Utah County, all around Utah that are working to this. And I think a lot of them are facing kind of like fatigue, you know, like when you're trying to fight the system and you're trying to make sure that people are heard. I mean, it's tiring.
It is.
So what would you tell those people to help them be resilient while they're fighting for justice, basically?
What I would say to those people is, first off, thank you. It is a tiring job. I know Carl Moore is out there, like, he tuned in at one say their name rally. Is tiring. And what I would say is just, you know, take some time apart. Just remember to self-care. Say a prayer. You know, smudge yourself. I personally like to listen to some of the songs that are people. I like to go hiking a lot, being out in nature, and I think that being in nature also helps you kind of take a step back and breathe, and also take in Mother Earth, what she what it is we're really doing here on Earth. Like being open really kind of grounds you back to where we are as people and get back in that harmony of walk in beauty above me, below me. And I think also just surrounding yourself with friends support, I think that will also help you to move forward and help you become a better leader and speak from your heart. I think when people don't have the correct words or they don't know exactly what to say, it becomes like you want to say all these things, but if you just speak from your heart and you're grounded with Mother Earth and have that whole sense of self, then you are able to go ahead and achieve your message and to help get across. I mean, you could talk to millions of people and maybe your message might just stick to 100, but that's how their friends and their friends and their friends. And so that's kind of the effect that you're going to have on people. And just because the whole mass of people don't get your whole message, just those people carrying on and like, oh, this is what I heard today on Instagram Live, or this was a different perspective that I never heard of. I never thought, I never thought masculinity is toxic and how that can kind of destroy maybe a family, how men perceive themselves and how they treat women. So it's always the learning experience, and whenever you can learn from somebody else as well, I think you don't always have to be talking. You can always you can listen to what people say, even if it's a different perspective. I recently lost my grandmother. And one of her teachings is to always pray. Like, he was a faithful woman, and he didn't speak English, but some of these kids that came from across the country, from Penn State, they came, and like just her knowledge and the way she lives. And if you live your life in a way that's in harmony and in prayer, I think people will gravitate to that. And you will also have like your mindset to be clear, and you'll be at peace with yourself, I think.
Gosh, thank you. I was crying the whole time you were talking, just because I feel like you are such a role model in what it means to be like Navajo, what it means to be a woman. I can tell you've been taking your grandmother's words to heart, and that's what's so frustrating about the mascot issue is that doesn't represent who we are. It doesn't represent how we think or how we feel. It doesn't do any of that. Yeah. And it's 2020, and we need the best representation of ourselves. And Leah, you gave us that, so thank you so much for joining us today. You're just awesome. So thank you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Leah and we went to high school together. It was amazing to have another Native person in school. And she's Navajo too, just like me. So, I mean, it meant a lot to always have her. It's been a while since we were in high school. We're not going to tell you how long, but hello, James. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hi.
How are you been watching? Hope you've been enjoying what everyone has had to say.
Yeah, some really powerful words from everyone today, and I'm just privileged to be on the same program as them tonight.
Yay! So, James, I'm gonna kind of shift the conversation a little bit over. In Bountiful, the idea of changing the mascot is kind of gaining some traction. But to what it's being changed to, instead of being Braves, it's just Brave. To kind of like reflect, kind of like what Carl and what Leah were saying about this idea of masculinity and this idea of, pride. And I just kind of wanted to get your perspective on, being of changing the names and kind of like what we actually need to have happen now.
Yeah, that's a great question, and this is a gray, kind of in the gray area, I think, especially talking about Brave, because it's talking more about an emotion than it is like a physical mascot. And I mean, first off, the problem with these mascots, right, is that it's only showing a stereotypical image of what natives are, a very small part of it, and it's for entertainment. And it seems like native mascots are the only natives that Americans care about, and that's wrong. We know that's wrong. We need to show the complexity of native humanity, that we have a range of emotions, and so to put someone into the same category as something is itself dehumanizing. I'm thinking that it's just really difficult to try and come to terms with some of these things, like talking about tradition. And it's been, tradition for about 69 years that Bountiful has had this mascot. So there's definitely something that the community is looking at, but they're looking inward instead of outward. And they're not realizing that there are so many native governments and native peoples that have said there are different ways in which you can honor us, that you can show us respect. And that the way that the Braves is, especially when the behaviors is based on stereotypical ideas of natives, that's wrong. That is completely racist. I also want to point out that mascots are often used. We've been talking about these notions of masculinity and so on. But other mascots, think of wolves or bears or lions or all of these other kind of animals or things. If you were face to face with one of those, how would you feel? I would be terrified. And that's part of the point of mascots. And so what they're saying is, in effect, this kind of hidden curriculum is teaching people you should be terrified of natives. You should be terrified of natives, right? Because at any moment, right, they could be coming over, attacking the school marm out on the prairie or whatever it is, and we need a John Wayne to come and civilize, with my fists. And that is so far removed from the reality of the contemporary issues that natives are facing. So, moving on to the idea, I know that this issue has, or this name about moving to Brave, dropping the S. And this is why I think it's a gray area, because it could easily move on to something, it could still be really problematic, right? It could be saying, well, instead of wearing 6 feathers in my headdress when I go to the games, I'll just wear 1, right? And it's like, that's still not, you're still not there. If Brave is used, but all of the native imagery is taken away, all of the behavior that went along with that is also taken away, but is also replaced with accurate history and accurate depictions of the humanity of natives, that is being brave. That's being brave. And I could see that accompanied with a mascot of a hart or a lion or other mascot, other thing, right?
Yeah.
But not a native. And so that's why I think it's kind of brave. We need to see the process. We need to see how this is going about. Now, we've been very upfront about why we think that this is racist, right? It's because it shows that one group holds the power to make the decision. They have the privilege. They don't have to look and listen to other people because that's what privilege is all about. And that's what makes it so difficult, right? Is that we have no say in how our own depictions are being represented to others. And it really gets at this question of how do people perceive Native Americans today, right? How does the general population perceive us, and why do they perceive us that way? Think of what you were taught in school. Think of the media and how that's given specific portrayals of what Native people is like. And when we think of mascots, then Jacqueline Keeler, she's a journalist based out of Portland, Oregon. She coined the term mascotry, which is basically the actions based on those stereotypes during a moment where social norms are lifted, meaning this is when people can act like natives, or what they think natives are acting like.
That's when you see face paint, the idea of what we look like or how we act in that setting.
Right, exactly. And so, as an educator myself, right, I teach higher education college at Salt Lake Community College, but at some point, I think every Native has been a Native mentor in the Grant School District, it feels like. but in that, right, that's part of educational equity. And in that whole idea, we look for facts and evidence, generally, broadly, to see what helps make students successful and makes them achieve their highest, and try to remove any kinds of roadblocks that might be there for students.
Right.
There are studies, plenty of studies over decades that have tracked this and show that this does do harm, psychological harm. The American Psychological Association, back in 2005, this is 15 years ago, has already made the stance that Native mascots are detrimental to Native students. And as I have said before, I argue that it's also detrimental to white students and people of other ethnicities because it warps their mind into what they think and perceive natives are like.
Right.
And it teaches them that they can treat native peoples as something and not someone, therefore dehumanizing us and leaving us in a position of no power. I don't think it's fair also that we push all of the burden onto the lone or the few Native students that might be at a high school like this, at a white majority high school. It is a lot to ask for one to put that on one Native student to try and tell the entire school what it is to be Native and how that is a racist image, how that's a racist symbol. It would be nearly impossible. I'm thinking of my 16, 17, 18-year-old self in high school. I didn't have the maturity. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the gumption to do those kinds of things. Not even close, right? I mean, it's taking me years to get to this point where I'm at right now. So that's why the community is coming to step in, is because we cannot leave our 1 or 2 or 3 Native students there alone. Right. Because we are here together. That's what the community is all about. So my plea then is for whites specifically, right, is to do what other good white allies have been doing and stepping up to this, teaching other whites why this is racist, right? It means that we're all participating in a racist society, meaning we all have some form of racist thoughts within us. And it means that to some degree, all of us are racist. We have to move away from this strict dichotomy of if you racist means you're a bad person.
You're bad. I'm not bad. Ugh, okay.
And that's why people say I'm not racist. And
Right.
I'm trying to be very compassionate towards people who are thinking this. Specifically, the bountiful mayor has said this. I just think that's an incomplete picture of what racism is like. Usually it's systemic, institutional, and it's also unintentional for the most part. It's being anti-racist that's important, meaning I have to gain knowledge to actively work against racism. And if you see kind of how the different institutions are working right now, they're a little hesitant, and I understand why, because of bureaucracy and how it does kind of move slower. But if the opportunity arises and we don't stand up, that is tacit consent for the status quo. It is, in a sense, an accessory to continue racism today.
Right.
And so, I want the mayor specifically, I'd love to sit down and talk, but to, this isn't in his purview.
Mm-hmm.
He was not voted in to talk about the mascot. The city council, the school board, they've all been neutral in this. The administration has gone through a very open and transparent process and trying to make that as involved as possible. Mm-hmm. And the mayor has come out and said, kind of like Dan Snyder, like never.
Yeah.
This is how it is.
Happened.
This is how it is. I'm honoring, and that's wrong. And we need that humility to be found among our white allies to say, I don't know everything, and I was wrong, and I need to admit that. And by admitting it, that is the first step towards reconciliation. That is what being a good neighbor is. That's what being kind is. And I know that so many people in Bountiful would consider themselves to be well-intentioned, kind people. And yet we have all of these factors that are pushing them to continue this institutional racism. And, I feel sympathy towards that, but there's only so much patience that we can take.
Exactly.
Right? We've been fighting this.
Go ahead.
Sorry. We've been fighting this for about 50 years. This is something that we've been trying to get rid of, and we still have some time to go.
We do. James, thanks so much for being on today. Our time is running out. We're going to get kicked off of Instagram. But just anybody that has seen our panelists today, follow them on Instagram, tell them that they're awesome, send them some money through Venmo. Before we head out, just want to make sure that you all know about August 4th at 5:45. There's going to be a prayer event at the Davis School District board meeting where we will have community members and Native people and all of our people that have been fighting for this, who will be there, who will be sending good vibes. And so we invite everybody to come. Our panelists again today, thank you so much. Your words have made me feel like I have another week in me that I can do this fight. And just thanks to everybody and have a wonderful evening. Bye.